Hello, my name is Ashley Teems, and today I'm going to present my project to you on the vernaculars of the United States, their development, and their impact on the English language. So, there are a multitude of vernaculars that have developed throughout the United States. Vernaculars refers to the languages or dialects that are spoken by the ordinary people in a particular country or region. For the purposes of this project, I'm going to focus primarily on African American Vernacular English, American Indian English, Creole/Pidgin, and Spanglish, or it's a Spanish English hybrid. My research question I want to focus on is how and why have various vernaculars developed within certain areas of the United States, and how have they impacted standard English? So, really for all time, vernaculars have often been considered to be a lesser form of language, and their use often bears many negative connotations. Many times, speakers of these different vernaculars are viewed as uneducated, no matter how untrue this may be. So that's something else that I want to take a look at, is why this is the case and how we can correct these negative views of various vernaculars. Alright, so first let's take a look at African American Vernacular English, also referred to as AAVE, also known as African American English, Ebonics, and Black Speech. So let's talk first about where it originated. So British colonization was occurring, and so there was British English, and then you had the slaves who were being brought over who spoke various different African languages, possibly even Creole. And so these basically just combined to form African American Vernacular English. In one of the study articles that I have linked in my works cited, it's called Dialect Accommodation in a Biethnic Mountain Enclave Community, More Evidence on the Development of African American English. This study article said that older African American English would often accommodate for the local dialects while keeping only a subtle ethnic difference. And instead of establishing an AAVE norm, accommodation for local dialects today is actually still increasing. The analysis of these communities supports the theory that older AAVE accommodated for those local dialects while maintaining that slight distinction from standard English, and also that local dialects are becoming increasingly accepted, yet for some reason there is still no push for an AAVE standard. So let's look at where it is spoken and why. So there are oddly not drastic differences in the AAVE spoken in different areas across the nation. Many speakers of AAVE often do what we call code switching or dialect switching, where they switch between AAVE and standard English depending on the social situation that they are in. It is also important to mention that not all African Americans know or speak AAVE. According to Rebecca S. Wheeler, AAVE should not be thought of as the language of black people in America. Many African Americans neither speak it nor know much about it. Those who do speak AAVE are not just blundering. They have learned a complex set of rules that happens not to be the same as the complex set of rules that defines standard English. The magazine article titled "Do You Speak American?" addresses assumptions on the impact of mass media on language and discusses changes to the dialects of African Americans. And it mentions how certain terms that were once disliked came back into prominence and became more popular after African Americans started using them. One example given is how most young women did not like to be referred to as girl. That was a derogatory term until African American women started using the term to refer to themselves. Once they did, it became the cool thing to say, as did the term cool. So, as society of the United States shifts and changes, the English language is also going to morph and reflect those changes. That includes changes that may come about by being influenced by various vernaculars, such as this example I've given from AAVE. Whoops. Sorry. All right, next let's look at the American Indian English vernacular. So first, where did it originate? So Native Americans migrated by a land bridge called Beringia that connected Alaska to Siberia. Native Americans migrated over the course of thousands of years, and each group that migrated spoke a single language. But as the group traveled across North America, it split apart into several smaller groups along the way. And as these subgroups settled into different locations, they often lost contact between one another. And so the language that they were speaking would evolve to the point that it would not even be recognizable by the other portion of their original group anymore. It would be completely different. I have this YouTube video here, is by a man named Ron Korn Jr. This is at a TEDx event where he is explaining how American Indian English is imperative to maintaining the American Indian culture. He states that loss of indigenous language is one of, if not the most significant losses to the American Indian culture. He speaks his opening and closing statements in the Menominee language, which is considered endangered and is only currently spoken or understood by about 35 people worldwide. So I want to give you just a second here to listen to a little bit of this language. The rest of that video is also very interesting. If you would like to go back and listen to it later, let me know. I'll be happy to share the links. So you can hear how distinct and unique this language is, and it is very beautiful, in my opinion. So now let's talk about where it is spoken and why. So it's spoken across the United States in various places, especially on Native American reservations. Many American Indian languages, like the Menominee language, are becoming endangered and even extinct now, though, because there are just so few people left who speak it or know it to be able to teach it to future generations. As far as the impact of American Indian English on Standard English goes, there's really not been a great influence on the language. There could be many potential reasons for this. One is that, unfortunately, Native Americans were considered savages, so their language bore many negative connotations to the English settlers. Because of this, people did not want to use any portion of the American Indian English language, and actively tried to make sure it did not influence their own speech, their own language. There were several different languages that only had a small population of Native Americans speaking it, though. So naturally, when there's a smaller group, there's going to be less of an impact overall on Standard English. I have to say, though, that the biggest impact that American Indian English has made on Standard English is in the naming of places, such as cities, states, mountain regions, you name it. the state of Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. We have a local city to us here. I live in Anniston, but we have a local city named Ohatchee, very much an American Indian name. The majority of our names of places in America do come from American Indian English or culture. Next, let's look at Louisiana Creole / Pidgin. So, first of all, where did it originate? In short, Louisiana. Creole-speaking individuals have both European and African backgrounds. It's important to note that Creole people come in all colors: black, brown, white, any color. There are French, Canadian, and African influences. So Louisiana Creole is like an amalgamation of all of these different languages and cultures coming together as one. Creole in Louisiana has a very complex social identity, though. It's not able to be categorized by race, class, or ethnicity as many other vernaculars are able to be categorized. And there are unfortunately many misconceptions that have made their way into official anthropological definitions of Creolization. So Louisiana was colonized by the French and Canadians, and they began importing slaves from specifically West Africa to work the land. Because there were so many different languages spoken among the slave population, this Creole language was created. Creole-speaking individuals have both European and African backgrounds, and when Creole first began being spoken in Louisiana, it meant that those individuals speaking the language were born in the colonies, regardless of their socioeconomic class or race. So as far as their impact on standard English goes, again, very similar to American Indian, there's little to no influence on standard English. Sure, there are many Cajun or Creole dishes that we all like to enjoy, but beyond that, there are just not many words and phrases that have been borrowed from Creole into English. There could be many reasons for this. Again, one reason would be negative connotations of Creole speakers, that many people seem to think that it is spoken by those who are unintelligent or uneducated. It was also, though, considered a slave language, though many non-slaves did speak it as well. So Creole has mainly stuck around to its original home of Louisiana. Alright, lastly, let's take a look at Spanglish. So Spanglish originated in the southern United States because this is where many native Spanish speakers immigrated to, as it is the closest portion of the United States to many of their home countries. Those who speak Spanglish are often criticized for not speaking a pure Spanish by monolingual Spanish speakers and for not shifting to English entirely. But then on the other hand, you have where it's often the case that Spanish-English bilingual speakers will criticize those who choose to speak a Spanglish hybrid instead of speaking strictly one or the other. So it's a situation where they cannot win. Latinos do often use this hybrid form of language, though, beyond just casual speech. So, as previously stated, this form of vernacular is mostly spoken in the southern United States, but especially in places that have a very heavy population of Spanish-speaking immigrants. Places like Texas, Florida, New York City. There's a descriptive report and journal article I read that explores how Cuban moms encourage or discourage their children to learn fluent Spanish based on their socioeconomic class. It found that while working class mothers would often encourage their children to learn English to prepare them to be successful, middle class mothers often encourage their children to become more fluent in Spanish instead, understanding how being bilingual would prepare them to be successful in the future. It's very interesting to note these differences because both socioeconomic